Thanks so much, Nicola. My name is Denver Brunsman. I'm the chair of the history department, and I'm joined today by Joe Blecker, our wonderful director of graduate studies. And you'll hear from Joel shortly. Katrin Schulheis is the advisor for our master's program. She's not able to be here today, but you can always reach her and find her information online. And you can also reach out to either me or Joel if you have interest in the master's program. All right, so just to kind of pick up on some of the things that Nicola was talking about in terms of GW's location, it really relates, I think, to why you might consider getting a graduate degree in history. This has changed a lot in the past generation. I'm sure that if you're participating in this webinar, you know something about what is often referred to as the crisis in the humanities, which takes on a lot of layers. But one of them is a decline in teaching jobs at the college level in history and other humanities. And this is true. This is a fact that we deal with, but we've tried to adapt to and really kind of build on all the incredible things you can do with a history degree. And so being in DC, as Nicola mentioned, we encourage internships, we encourage work with nonprofits, non-government organizations, government offices, museums. There's all kinds of possibilities, and we're happy to talk more about that if you want to get into the specifics in the Q&A. But one way I often think about it is I encourage graduate students to think like undergrads and the way that undergrads are kind of looking at careers and internships and things like that, because there are all kinds of possibilities. In terms of GW specifically, I think the first reason why is our exceptional faculty, and I truly mean that. We have really talented colleagues who cover an incredible amount of time and space, and I'll say a little bit more about that in just a minute. But I'll come back to Washington D.C. Just say a little bit more about our relationships with different organizations and different possibilities you have. So we're a metro ride away from both the National Archives and the Library of Congress and many other archives, libraries, and museums. And for this reason, I think that GW is certainly the best place in the world to do American history, and I think it's one of the best places in the world just to study any part of the world and their history. There's also a lot of other universities in Washington, Georgetown, American, Catholic, Maryland, George Mason, and we're all connected. We're in a consortium, and so we don't want you to go to all those places. We want you to come to GW. You can still take a class there and have GW on your degree. And so this really maximizes what you can do, as a student in Washington. You also are able to use all of their libraries. And finally, just I'll put in a plug for our own department community, our graduate community, which is really vibrant. And if you're interested in GW, we have some visit days coming up, and if those don't work for you, we're able to set up something else. And I think it's really valuable to talk to a current graduate student. We have regular brown bag sessions about teaching and other professional issues, constant lectures, colloquia. And so graduate students are really full members of the department. We treat them, as professionals and the budding professionals that they are. In terms of the faculty, like I said, we cover pretty much anything you might want to study, but we have particular pockets of expertise in the areas that are mentioned on this slide. And I think I would emphasize in particular American history, Asian history, the international history of the Cold War, pretty much pick your country with the Cold War, and we study it. And the faculty are really outgoing and generous and want to work with students. And so if there's someone in particular that you might find online or their webpage or something, I encourage you to reach out to them and start the conversation now about your graduate education. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Joel Blecker.
Hi, everybody. I'm Joel Blecker. I'm the Director of Graduate Studies. I also am a professor. My specialization is Middle East studies, Islamic history, Islamic thought, and yeah, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the difference between the MA and the PhD program, and then I'm going to turn it back over to Denver to talk a little bit in more detail about the MA, and then I'll talk a little bit more about the PhD. Um, the MA, it's a really versatile degree. It's designed to provide students with a broad training in historical research and historiography in a wide variety of fields. It can be a really good stepping stone if you would like to apply to a PhD program, especially if you've been out of college for a few years. You don't have a recent writing sample or letters of recommendation, or you're not quite up to date in what the current debates are in the field you're interested in. This MA can be really good for that. But as Denver was saying, especially having an MA in history, being based in DC, uh, being linked up to all these different cultural institutions and archives and libraries, it can be a path to many different kinds of careers. The big difference between the MA and the PhD, obviously, you can complete the MA in a much shorter period of time. It's also, you can do it on a part-time basis. The PhD students are full-time students. But MA students often will work during the day, and we schedule our courses. We do schedule a good bulk of our courses in the evenings so that students after 5 p.m. Can get on the metro and get their history graduate degree. So this is I think this is a big distinction between the two. And the other distinction, of course, is that the MA, there's just some very modest financial assistance available for this degree. For the PhD, by contrast, because it's full time, you're going to get funded for 5 years. Um, of course, it's much more competitive, and as part of that process, Denver, you can go on to the next slide because I'm talking about the PhD now.
Yeah.
As part of that process, you're also going to be employed for 4 of those 5 years as teaching assistants, or potentially, I guess, if you're completing your if it's taking you a little longer than those 5 years, then you could I guess you could be you could be TAing for longer. But typically, we try to get students, finish with their degree at 5 years. I would say like 6 years, is often, the students on that fifth year are they're ready to apply for a dissertation completion grant or something like that, and to try to get them finished by 5 or 6 years. But yeah, we know life happens sometimes too, and it can take a little bit longer. But yeah, it's the PhD. It's 2 years of coursework, like the MA students do, and the PhD, I would say it matters quite a bit more who your advisor is because you work much more closely with them. And you'll end up producing a dissertation project, which makes a significant original contribution to the field. So that relationship with your advisor and making sure that your interests align becomes much more important in the PhD for those pursuing the PhD degree. So to get a little bit more detail for the MA course of study, I'm going to turn it
Yeah.
back over to Denver.
Okay, terrific. So Joel gave you a great background on the MA degree, and I'll just let you know a little bit about what's involved. There's a lot of flexibility in this degree and what you take and what you concentrate in. There's only two required courses, and you can see them on this slide. One is called History and Historians, which kind of introduces you to the field of history and historiography of different important subjects. And then historical research and writing, and it's truth in advertising. It's all about historical research and writing, the methods, best practices for those two important tasks for a historian. So then you take the rest of your different classes. I mentioned that you have the ability to take classes at consortium institutions. You can take a couple of classes outside the history department, graduate seminars in other departments. You can even take a few undergraduate classes for graduate credit. That happens sometimes when there's very specific things that a graduate student might be interested in. But we do have, I think a healthy number of seminars and enough to complete the degree. Yeah, I think that's the main thing on that. There's two different tracks with the MA degree, and you can see there's thesis and non-thesis. And I think right now we might be exactly half or so in our department. We have close to 30 around 30 or so current MA students between our first year and second year group, and there's no right or wrong, there's nothing better or worse in terms of being thesis or non-thesis. It's really just a choice based on what you want to do, and we'd be happy to talk more about that. I think usually students who want to go on to get a PhD will choose the master's thesis just to get that experience and to write a longer research project. You can see the length. Usually we usually require about 50 plus pages of narrative, and then you're going to have all of your bibliography and other things involved that can bring the whole thing pretty high. The other alternative is to write two research papers, usually between 20 to 30 pages, and you can do that in regular seminars. The nice thing about this is that's about the length that journals are looking for, and we do have a good track record of our graduate students publishing their work. I think I'll turn it back. Well, no, I guess I got one last thing, a couple of things for the MA program. In terms of applying, you can see that in bold, this is the really big thing to know. No GRE scores are required. We don't even look at them. So it's not even a kind of thing where, it's an extra thing. It's just not part of our consideration. I would say that the most important thing, when applying to a graduate program is your statement of purpose and really telling us who you are, what you want to study, why. That's all really crucial for us. And of course, all the other elements are important as well. Your background, what you've done as an undergraduate or other graduate work, writing sample, letters of recommendation. And let me stress something that you don't have to have done a BA in history. You didn't have to do your undergraduate work in history. It could actually pretty much be in anything, as long as you have some kind of argument or reason that you want to study history and why you would want to get the history MA. So, I think we think very broadly. We all have diverse backgrounds, and we're open to, where you are coming from. The deadlines are always important. Always get the deadlines. So our next deadline that's coming up is April 1st. In terms of financing the MA degree, as Joel mentioned, we don't have full comprehensive scholarships, where you might be a teaching assistant and it'll pay for your whole degree. There are different scholarships though that you can get, and there's a website that you can see on the screen here. I think if you just Google, GW, CCAS, graduate funding, there are a list of different things you can apply for. So I think that's important to keep in mind. As Joel mentioned, it's very common for our MA students to work at least part-time. And I'll just add here at the end that teaching for us is not an impossibility. And when I say that, I mean being a teaching assistant. Depending on the semester, we sometimes need MA students, and as our PhD program shrinks a bit, because this is just a national trend that there's fewer and fewer PhD slots because there's fewer jobs in the academy. We are actually increasingly looking to MA students to TA. So if you apply and you come in, let us know if that interests you, because I might need you. All right, Bill, I'm going to pass it back to you for more PhD.
Okay, all right. So the PhD experience, thanks, Denver. The PhD experience is a little it's a little different, but actually starts out very similar to the MA experience. Just like the MA students, you take about 3 to 5 semesters of coursework, depending on whether you're already coming in with an MA or not. If you come in with an MA already, we can kind of fast track you to get you closer to working on that dissertation, get you through your comps exams and get you out researching and writing more quickly. But if you're coming in without an MA, which it often happens as well, then you usually do about yeah, I would say about 2 years of coursework before taking what we call your comprehensive exams. And these are usually 3 general fields where you work with usually your advisor and 2 other professors in the department to come up with your the kind of your both your usually is like one area where you're specialized in, and then other areas of that could be used for teaching competence or something, maybe that's related to your dissertation, but not you know you know, maybe could be fruitful and helpful for it, but is a way for you to just to have a chance to show some competency, broader competency in history outside of your area of specialization. And then right after passing your comps, you're going to propose your dissertation in before a committee of 3 faculty members in the department, including your primary advisor. And this is just a great chance for you to get feedback on your project. It's going to be one of those moments where you're going to have the full attention of professors in our department giving you feedback, sometimes going through line by line and offering you, here's some suggestions how to make this project manageable, how to make sure you get it done within 5 or 6 year, within the six, within the five, within the timeline. And yeah, and give you advice also, maybe methodological advice and things like that. So these are really productive moments before you set off on your on your on your on your kind of your year of research and writing. And I think I kind of alluded to this earlier, but just to clarify, everyone gets either one fellowship year or 2 non-consecutive semesters where there's no expectation that they will TA or teach. They can just fully, or take any courses, they can just fully dedicate themselves to their research. And oftentimes students will use that time to go abroad. PhD students will use that time to go abroad to kind of visit an archive that's difficult for them to access while they're in DC. So, that usually is scheduled sometime after your dissertation proposal, and to give you a time to collect the data, the documents, whatever you need to write your dissertation successfully. And then at the end, when you've written up your dissertation and you're ready to defend, you'll have a committee of 5 faculty members. It's your advisor. It's 2 readers in the department, usually someone you've worked with for your comprehensive exams. And then you'll get 2 external examiners who have not read your dissertation to be part of this dissertation defense. And at least one of those should come from outside of GW. And I think we have a dissertation defense coming up this spring, with a professor from Johns Hopkins who's going to be examining our dissertation defense. So it's not uncommon, that you'll have professors from the area, like that. Sometimes you'll have professors, from further afield coming in and giving you this really rich feedback on your dissertation, which you can then take with you if you want to publish the dissertation as a book later or piece it out into articles. So getting that kind of critical feedback is so much of what this experience is about, and is really quite helpful. Okay, so Denver, we can go to the next slide. Um, so yeah, this is the placement of our PhD graduates. And I think Denver mentioned the situation already with the academic job market. Um, and, basically I would say about when we collected some data on this and tried to get some stats on our PhD graduates placement, we found that about a third of our history graduates were getting tenure track positions within 3 years of completing their degree. About a fifth got jobs working in the private sector, a sixth got hired to work in the government. But I would just say, as well, we've also had a number of graduates get uh, shorter term teaching positions or postdocs, and or have been hired in archives or non-profit organizations. And I think you will find this, is actually pretty consistent with a lot of even our flagship institutions, that this is about that this is pretty typical. So we can look at the next slide. Okay, so the requirements, similar to the MA, we don't require GRE scores. Some of the language exams are important both for MA and PhD, so do take note of that. If you're coming in English as a second language. Um, um, like the MA, you also don't necessarily need a BA in history to be competitive for the PhD program, although it can certainly help. But I would say probably the most important thing is, again, your statement of purpose is so important. I mean, someone with terrific grades on their college transcript, with a, have amazing letters of recommendation, but doesn't have a clear statement of purpose, hasn't reached out to our faculty to make sure that their research interests align with their research interests beforehand, is going to have a much harder time. And the PhD program has gotten so competitive. I think just last year we had 4 slots for 65 applicants. So having a clear statement of if you have, like, you got kind of like a not so great a grade in your college biology class or whatever it is, like, we can overlook that if you have a really clear statement of purpose. You've reached out to our faculty members. You have two or three faculty members who are really on board, who are excited about your project, and it aligns. So I think, that's probably the kind of the best piece of advice that I can that we can give you here, is really to reach out to professors beforehand, before you apply to the PhD program, and really take a close look at their profiles on our website. Look at the kinds of things they've been publishing recently. Even if there's something that was interesting to you, they published 20 years ago, make sure that whatever they're working on now, their current book project, that it aligns with that. And I think you're going to be you're going to have an edge if you do that. So that's probably my best advice. All right, so the funding I described already, so I don't want to repeat myself.
Yeah, I think probably pretty
Yeah,
clear. Yeah.
I think we've kind of gone all over this. There are some extra, what is this? There are some additional research and teaching fellowships and grants on a competitive basis that come up from time to time. So this is something that we try to help our, our graduate students with when they come up. We do have some funds actually that enable students to present their research at scholarly conferences. This is really important actually when the pandemic was happening and they cut the faculty's conference budget and they protected the graduate students, right? Is that right?
That's
So
right.
this is,
Yeah.
this is something that we really we value. And with summer research funding too, we try to, even though we can't guarantee a certain amount every summer, we usually have been able to come up with something to support our graduate students, and it, it's not insignificant, to help our students pursue their research during the summer, which is a lot of kind of our graduate students' most active research time when they're not TAing.
And this is, I should add, just mention this in terms of the master's program as well. In the last few years, we've extended our summer research funding to support master students. And, when graduate students come in, we really press them to make us say no. Like we want people to be ambitious and get conferences. So we've been funding master students going to academic conferences, presenting as well. So like I said, your colleagues. You are in the profession. You're historians, and we want you to be treated that way.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
and that's even more true for the PhD students in the sense that, it's 5 years fully funded, your
yeah,
tuition is funded, you are just as much a colleague in our department in that sense.
yeah, absolutely. Just to close here, and this is connected to I think the overall experience that people have in our department, and also as an applicant, and that is basically that we value diversity. We see people holistically. We're interested in you, regardless of your background. And you can see that something that we did several years ago, and we think is very important, is we have a graduate student Bill of Rights, in essence, that particularly for PhD students, but it carries over to master students as well, especially when they're teaching assistants. Certain things that you can expect, and if it doesn't happen, then you come and talk to the chair, either me or whoever's the chair when you're when you're here, because like I said, we think this is very important. And with that, I think that's the end of our slideshow. Nicole, we might have some questions. I know you were answering some of them already. Um, I guess I'll carry over to this. This gives you some email addresses. So you have Joel's here. I mentioned that Katrin Schultheis is officially the MA advisor. I've just been playing that role today, but you can reach out to any of us.